Okay, welcome everyone to our next webinar. The topic on this one is why enterprises are failing at DevOps, and I hereby give the floor to Greg.
Greetings all. So I'm going to attempt to let you come to this conclusion by yourself so that at some point during my presentation you will say, okay, now I understand why enterprises are failing at DevOps. And I'm going to prep you for that journey with one question. How can you hit a target that you haven't identified? So the reason why everyone is trying to implement DevOps is fairly self-evident, because we live in the age of unprecedented change, and everything is changing so quickly and so fast that those who cannot keep up fall behind, and to fall behind is to become irrelevant, and to become irrelevant is to become obsolete. So living in the time of the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, has made DevOps and its associated delivery practices very, very relevant. So everyone is trying to do them with varying levels of success. Of course, success and failure are relative terms. Many people are trying to implement DevOps and are succeeding to an extent. They are saving money, they are going faster, they are deploying more reliably and on a more regular basis. But we can clearly see that there are some who are getting a lot more benefit out of this than others. And that's what I mean. When I say people are failing at DevOps, it doesn't mean that they're not changing. It doesn't mean that they're not improving. What I mean when I say that is that they are not getting the full benefit that is possible relative to others who are getting that benefit. So there's a scale of implementation success, and so at some arbitrary point, even though there's improvement, I'm calling it failure. So that's my disclaimer. That doesn't mean that they're not getting any benefit at all. It just means that there's so much more benefit to be had. So why do we do things the way that we do now? The way that the legacy practices that we have come from a particular source, and they have become deeply ingrained into the Western mindset of management, of business. They've become so deeply ingrained that they're the box that we don't know that we're in. We don't even know that we're following these principles, the principles of scientific management. The guy who invented basically the way to manage factories after the Industrial Revolution is Frederick Winslow Taylor, and he developed his set of principles, and they were the only game in town. Essentially, you either managed according to his principles or according to no principles, because no one had a better way to do it. And his basic idea was, we want people to be able to come in to a station, screw a cap on a widget or whatever as efficiently as possible, and do as many as possible in the time that they are paid to be there. So these are principles of management for unskilled workers producing goods for markets that didn't change, to users that had no to consumers that had no real expectation, because all this was new. And the main goal was resource efficiency. And at that time, that came down to the efficiency of people, using things like quotas, using carrot and stick methodologies, where if you overproduced, you were rewarded, and if you underproduced, you were punished. This seemed like a great idea. It has worked. It worked very well since there was no competition, and we simply don't question the things that we have inherited. Now, we don't even ask if this is the only way, much less if this is the best way. And this works out. This focus on resource efficiency has worked out in this way. You will recognize this structure, a manager and direct reports, reporting to a manager who has direct reports, reporting to a manager who has direct reports. And there are very, very specific reasons why we do things this way. And there are very specific methodologies around how many direct reports should a manager have. And those methodologies involve how many people can you really know what they're doing. Or in other words, how many people can you really micromanage? And we call that, what we're trying to implement is accountability. In other words, we want to know if someone is succeeding or failing so we can hold them accountable. Now, there are a lot of things that kind of are unintentional consequences of this. It's a truism that for any action or decision, the vast majority of the consequences of that decision will be unintended. And you can't really know what the actual effect is until after you've made the decision, and there's been some time for things to happen after that. So we have a lot of consequences that have flowed from this that we're not necessarily aware of. Now, if you contrast this historical methodology that is our primary method of managing people and things and process with the work of Deming, who basically had a completely different methodology for management that people in the U.S. did not see a need to change from what they were doing. In their mind, they were successful enough. So post-World War II, Japan was in the midst of a complete re-identification of their national identity, and were receptive to his methodology. And his methodology, the thing that's really interesting to me is that Deming was a statistician, and all of his insights flowed from looking at the numbers, from gathering data, measuring things, forming hypotheses, and then testing those hypotheses with experiments. And yet he arrived at, using the scientific method, he arrived at something that was very, very different than scientific management, which is what Taylor called his methodology. And what he found, the missing piece that he found, was the understanding of human psychology. So the biggest waste that he found that could be eliminated was the waste of human potential by managing people in a way that was counter to their basic impulses that caused disengagement and discouragement. And he found that when you free people from micromanagement and lack of purpose and give them and empower them and give them ownership of the outcome rather than ownership of a set of tasks, that this really changed the way they engaged with the system. It eliminated disengagement and discouragement. And he came up with 14 points of what he called his total quality management system, and these have become the guiding principle of Agile, Lean, and DevOps. We're actually moving beyond DevOps now, and we have a new term that's taking hold that this may be the first time you've heard it. It's called ALDO, Agile, Lean, and DevOps. And these are all very, very related concepts and very, very empowering to each other. And whenever you really understand what it is that Deming is actually saying, that he's using, that he has 4 lenses that he uses to examine the work and the process, and one of those lenses is totally missing in most management methodology, and that lens is human psychology, because humans are the dominant force in the system, not the process, not the accountability factors. None of that are nearly compare to the effect of human psychology and whether people are engaged or disengaged in the process. In other words, are people coming onto the job and punching a clock and then punching out at the end of the day? are, do they feel engaged? Do they feel a sense of ownership over the work that is being done? And the results that you get are vastly different. Both Deming and Drucker said, have a quote that's very similar, which I'll paraphrase, which is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. In other words, if you can take a person and drop them from doing the same thing in one culture into another culture, a corporate culture, organizational culture, and they will get very different results. So their psychological engagement with the process is one of the biggest keys that he found. Now, these are Deming's 14 points, and it's worth. I'm not just going to read them out loud to you, but if you're, depending on how familiar you are with DevOps, you have seen the focus of DevOps grow over time to encompass more and more of these points. Now, the very first thing that we did in DevOps was we implemented this point: break down barriers between departments. That is literally where the name comes from, Dev and Ops. Dev and Ops getting on the same page. Another one that you'll hear that is necessary for DevOps is blameless culture, which is the implementation of another of Deming's points, drive out fear. Some very important ones that are being implemented into DevOps now are put everyone to work to accomplish the transformation. The transformation is everyone's job. And that is amplified by the very first 2 points: create a constancy of purpose and adopt a new philosophy. Build quality in is very important, and quality can be security, can be reliability. These are things that you can't bolt on. They have to be baked in. So as you can see, moving through these points, you get to a more and more complete understanding of what DevOps is. So it should be apparent by now that these two management methodologies do not mix very well. The problem is that one of them is second nature to us, so second nature that we don't question it, and the other one is a foreign concept. And we're used to trying to solve problems in our business, problems in our IT, by using rules, tools, and oversight. Those are our go-tos. One time I was lost in the hills of Alabama, of northern Alabama, and I went up the wrong mountain, and I got to the top. This was in the age of paper maps. I got to the top and asked a gentleman at a small store, how do I get here? And he told me, you can't get there from here. You have to start somewhere else. In other words, I was too far down the wrong road, and I needed to drive back down the mountain to go up the other mountain at another point. I was only about 5 miles from where I needed to be, but there was a huge valley between the two, and there were no roads. So I could not cross the gap. I had to go back down the mountain and start on a road that goes up the other mountain. This is kind of the situation that we find ourselves in implementing DevOps in our legacy organizations. These management methodologies are incompatible. One of them naturally produces disengagement, and one of them naturally produces engagement. This is our traditional method of managing value, of managing the work. Someone has an idea on the business side. They deliver a requirement. Now, at every decision point along the way, the bigger the decision, the higher up this chain it goes. Small decisions can be made at this bottom level, but anything that is not a tiny decision that has not already been determined what is the answer to this has to go up the chain to another level, and sometimes 2 or 3 levels up the chain. This is an inherent bottleneck, and what's more, there are a lot of consequences of this that we did not anticipate, that it's a game of whisper. Requirements are misunderstood or disagreed upon at different points in the process, and we're basically extracting value and introducing waste as we are sending things through this process in this manner. So what is the alternative in the lean agile DevOps world? Then what we're trying to accomplish basically is this. What we really want to do is take that idea and with as little friction and delay as possible, get the value that we believe this idea has to where the value can be obtained. And we're asking questions like, if some part of the process doesn't add value, why are we doing it? And there are lots of parts of our bureaucracy that aren't actually adding value, but we don't question them because that's just how we do it. We have lots of different parts of our workflow that really constitute nothing but waste, and some of them are driven by the expectations of the culture, our organizational culture, which we don't even think to question. And so, what is the solution for that? Now, this isn't as simple as having an aha moment and then deciding, well, we're just going to think differently, because culture is the box that you don't know that you're in. And when you're mired in a particular thinking, you can't see your forest for your trees. Working through the implications of a radically new understanding takes time and experience. So one huge accelerator is to have someone with that experience and a new set of eyes come in and take a look and help you understand where are your bottlenecks. This is where Accenture can play a huge role in helping our clients come to grips with this new world. And if we don't, someone else will. So in practical terms, this manifests itself as silos, reporting silos. And each element of our workflow only cares about a tiny piece of the work. And there's a quote from Deming that a man with a quota to meet, or a man with a metric to meet, will meet that metric or that quota even if he has to destroy the rest of the enterprise to do it. So how many times have you seen it be true that one person, to satisfy their job requirement, has to do something which makes everything more difficult for everyone else? This is, as a security guy, this is one of the things that made it very difficult to work with other teams, because they saw my job as nothing but an obstacle to theirs. We basically viewed each other as competitors, and we viewed the work as a zero-sum game, where for me to get my way, their life had to be more difficult, and for them to get their way, my life had to be more difficult. And at the end of the day, that's kind of how we saw the work. This is where the magic of lean and agile can help realign the incentives that we have, so that I don't only care about a tiny piece of the work. And one of the reasons that that's so important is because this manifests in a mindset like this, that what we have produced that has satisfied our requirement, and now we consider ourselves done, is causing problems for other people in the workflow. This is a source of waste. Now we've introduced more delay and rework, and these are the killers of the efficiency of getting the flow of value from idea to market. So probably the biggest problem that we have that stems from the mindset difference between these two methodologies, people see that DevOps provides something they don't have, and because a side effect of DevOps is automation, they believe that DevOps is all about automation. And so therefore, to achieve the benefits of DevOps, all they have to do is introduce more automation. And then we kind of get something like this. Because we only understand the square peg, and DevOps is a round hole, we take the square peg and we try to just jam it in, whether it fits or not, whether it makes sense or not, and whether we really understand the fundamental principles or not. This actually exacerbates the fundamental problems with silos, because if you have a DevOps group that is responsible to do all of the quote-unquote DevOps work, then all you've really done is introduce a new silo, a new source of waste, a new source of wait time, a new source of wheel spinning, that still you don't have an overall flow of value. You still have kind of the necessary corollaries to all of the components of our legacy management. So what we actually have to do is start back from the beginning. We can't get there from here. We have to turn around, go back to another point in the process, and start up the other mountain. And that means that the first thing we have to do is come to more than a surface understanding of what DevOps is, of why DevOps works, and how does that manifest, right? I mean, and even a lot of people who are very facile in DevOps and in DevOps automation and DevOps tool chains are missing Deming's third lens. You see there, Deming's third lens is human psychology, because we want to work with people's intrinsic motivation systems and not against them. We don't want to try to beat their motivation into submission. We want to try to engage those motivation systems by helping them to feel like they're owners of the work and the outcome. So how do we actually do that? Well, you have to go back and think about what is the problem that DevOps actually is intended to solve. We have these problems manifest in a couple of different ways. The reasons that DevOps works so well is because we're getting people on the same page. We're eliminating problems like you see here, because we start to realize we're all in this boat, and the outcome, the right outcome is the right outcome for all of us, not just some of us. And we're trying to do things like build a culture of continuous learning and continuous improvement, where we're continually improving our process, continually improving our culture, and continually working on fixing our misaligned incentives. So I'm going to give you a series of statements that will help you really understand the fundamental power of DevOps. DevOps is about integration across discipline boundaries. Integration is a function of collaboration. Collaboration happens only when incentives are aligned. Incentives are artifacts of corporate culture, which we mostly inherit from Taylor and scientific management. And if we don't fix incentives, what did we really accomplish? Maybe we did something. Maybe we got some cost reduction. Maybe we got some speed improvement. But is that DevOps? So this is an alternative way to think about and view the pipeline. Instead of looking at it purely from a tools perspective, you can think about it as the flow of value, where you have substituted for bureaucratic sign-offs pre-negotiation of team empowerment, where this is the shift left mentality. We've all decided what we're going to do at the beginning, and then we all work together until it is done, until it is reliable, until it's secure. We're all invested in that outcome. There's an almost infinite amount that could be said about this, and 30 minutes is not near enough time to get to the bottom of this. But if you want a one-sentence definition of DevOps, I think the best one that incorporates all of this thinking is that DevOps is the realignment of IT around delivering business value. Whatever does not contribute to delivering that business value is waste, and waste should be eliminated. And it's just as important to know what DevOps is not as to know what DevOps is. And so we have a list of things that DevOps is not. DevOps is not all of these things you see on the right. So this is a standard Accenture slide, and it touches on some of our important things that give us the value of DevOps: cohesive team with shared objectives, lean principles of continuous delivering value, embrace failure, recover automatically, degrade gracefully, experimentation continuous experimentation, continuous improvement, and we have what really here are 3 of Deming's lenses, but for some reason we're leaving out the 4th one of human psychology, which he and Drucker both agreed was the dominant lens, was the dominant factor. I think this is a big mistake, and I think it's one that a lot of people are making, and I think that we can lead the way on helping our clients understand that you can't get there from here. You have to start somewhere else and focus more on helping them understand this at a more fundamental level. So I've got 2 slides here that I want to show you that these are the basic guiding principles that we can take our customers through. That what we have always done is sought efficiency through hierarchy, and what we are trying to do now is seek business agility through decentralization. Now that sounds like chaos, and it sounds unmanaged. So then we have to help them understand that this is the new role of governance in our organizations. We do not have ungoverned, unmaintained, unmanaged change and decentralization. We have governed, managed, aligned, but the governance is the product of negotiation, diplomacy, and basically using all of these powerful tools to get everybody on the same page. That is the new world that we have to get to, and we have to help our clients get to. This is the way to stay alive in the world of continuous change, the world of radical change, the world of exponential change. I had hoped to leave a couple minutes for discussion, but I did not. So we are out of time. So I would like to thank you for attending and invite you to engage in conversation with me and others about how to spread these new ideas. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Really interesting.